I'm Nick Williams, founder of DeepBridge Consulting. Welcome to another episode of Whiteboard Wednesday. Today, we're going to be getting into 3 critical elements of your digital growth that you could be putting off due to how painful they can be. And that's what we're going to talk about today and how to actually make them a little bit more manageable so you can start growing on your digital platforms. Stick around. Welcome back to another episode of Whiteboard Wednesday. Today we're going to be getting into three critical elements of your digital growth that ultimately will drive how you're able to scale and how you drive the long-term sustainability of your business. And just to rattle them off really quick, we would push you to be focusing on your content, be focusing on gathering your emails, and be building your links. And the really important thing about these 3 things is the earlier you start, the better off you'll be. But again, if this is a new business or if this is a business you're taking over, if you're in a new role, this is one of those things that you kind of put off. You put your head down and you just do your job and you forget that there's no perfect time to start these things, so you might as well start now. Because once you get into it, about 12 months down the road, 6 months down the road, there's going to be a set of problems that requires your attention. And the catch-22 is the deeper you get into your business, the more rocks you uncover, the more worms that crawl out. So you have to deal with things on the fly. So it's going to leave you less time to build these foundational principles. And it's also one of those things that's easy to neglect because you're making sales, you're generating business. There may even be revenue, there may be profit happening without you actually focusing on these 3 things. It is, as we see with a lot of our clients and a lot of people we consider to bring onto the platform, or just some people we're helping out or opining on. This is one of those. These are 3 of those elements that it is a hole, it is a gap. No matter how strong the fundamentals of the business are, there seems to be these little cracks. And the problem is, if you don't do these things, it's not to say that you can't succeed, but these are mission critical to very, very strong businesses. That's very important. You can succeed without these, but these 3 things have in common, and the thing that major strong businesses and brands that you recognize have in common is their ability to focus on these 3 things. So we're going to start with number 1. You need to learn to build, to write, to drive, to create content. You have to press publish. That is probably our favorite thing to say at DeepBridge Consulting. And that's one thing I say I say to my clients too is, look, if you don't have it, there's nothing to really tweak. If you don't create it, there's nothing to improve. So you can't be so worried about, how do I sound, how do I look? And if you're a brand or business that's existing with equity, you're shifting the dynamics a little bit, but you still have to go out, create, and press publish. So the one thing I would say is you have to go create. You have to find a way to convey your ideas, your stories, your principles to the outside audience. And there's 2 things embedded within content that make it so important. Your content has a one-to-one relation with your ability to be found on search engines. So we'll focus on Google, let's talk about. So if you go on Google and type anything in, go ahead, press pause, do what you gotta do. Likely, 9 times out of 10, what you're clicking on is a blog. You're not actually clicking on some subpage of the site with an H1 header. You're probably clicking on, and if it's a popular keyword, depending on what you're typing in, that's your keyword. If it's popular, then it will be very hard to tell whether it's a blog or a subpage, and that's the point, right? Really good businesses create so much content that they understand that, look, if I create some content around this keyword, I'm gonna get some density, I'm gonna get some search traffic and some volume around that keyword. So if you are a coffee distributor or you are a craft brewery, if you're not writing content, your ability to be found on Google has a one-to-one relationship with how many times you say that keyword or phrase on your website. So think about it, how many times can you, in a non-awkward way, say the word craft brewing on your website without it being just not even readable, right? So if you have it 3 times and your competitor has it 55, they're gonna win. As long as the content's decent, they're gonna win, because they've mathematically increased their chances of being selected on Google. That is what that keyword density means. And that's why blogs exist from an SEO standpoint. Now that's more of just the technical way to look at it. All that said, you could have a lot of content that's just really bad. And if that's the case, and it's 55 versus what, you're 5 times, if your competitor is 55, just horrible content, well, Google's actually not going to rank them higher than you in that situation. So this is all predicated on having good content, but I say that because when you're producing content, make sure it's valuable content. We've talked about that in other pieces, but your customer experience, the customer journey, that's ultimately number one. That's ultimately number 1, 2, and 3 to Google. So as long as your content's good, you're going to win out in that search ranking. But you need to be focusing on the customer experience. So if you go out there and focus on your content. If you're focusing on your content, you're focusing on a very customer-centric approach to your business model. You're giving them answers, you're answering objections, you're giving them a better experience when you create more, 300, 500, hopefully 1,000+ word articles that actually drive some sort of incremental value. So as long as you're focusing on the customer, your content will fall into place when you create it. So the 2 key things, just to highlight them again, when you're creating your content, the reason you need to be focusing on your content is for SEO purposes, to be found, and your customer experience, to give them a better experience, to answer more questions, and to essentially tell a better story about your brand. The second pillar, and the second main thing that it's painful and you're likely avoiding it due to how maybe just lack of information or to how difficult it sometimes can be, is going to be this, how you're collecting your emails. Email collection is definitely one of those things. Just start right now, do what you have to do. And there's a way we prefer to do it. We prefer ConvertKit. ConvertKit is by far the most, in our opinion, the most advanced way to collect emails, to build forms, to automate the process, to build these little algorithms that can have persuasion sequences all on the back end, so you can go to sleep and wake up with conversations and really mask this idea of a bot. And ConvertKit does a really good job of that. You can really step in. You can decide when you step into a conversation and what kind of message you're telling. But that's not to say there aren't perfectly fine competitors out there that don't have a giant learning curve. MailChimp's one of them, and likely, depending on who your hosting company is, there's probably something already embedded within. So, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Wix has something like this. WordPress is going to have dozens of likely free plugins. Weebly will certainly have this. Squarespace will have this. So a lot of these places will probably have a free version of this, but the fact remains you have to start collecting emails. Because let's say you're having all these conversations and your brand only exists on Instagram or Facebook. If Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat, if these platforms go away tomorrow, you don't have a brand. That should be your way to gut check. So look at your brand. If whatever platform you're speaking on, whatever social platform you're focusing on, if it goes away tomorrow, do you have a business? Do you have customers? And do you have a way to scale out your brand story? And the answer is likely going to be no if you're not focusing on this majorly important component of your business. Now, like we talked about, it's very easy if you just started a business, if you're taking over a business, it's very easy to go head down and forget and not focus on this part because it doesn't seem as important, or you could be driving business without it right now. But the problem with that is if you just start immediately, and that's as simple as my recommendation, some actionable insight is to make a form. A form is essentially when you're on any website and you see input your name, input your email. Just place that somewhere. Because the great thing about this is if you're making, and content ladders up into these next 2 pillars, but if you're creating content and you always include some forms, as you create content, you're going to push the snowball down the hill. So as Google starts to reward you on the Search Console and on your Google rankings, and you begin to rank for keywords, more people are going to come to your site. Now, in this situation, imagine what we were talking about. So if you put your head down and forget and just say, look, I have other things to do, you do that for a year, you just missed out on a year of how many emails could you have collected? How many emails after that first year of you really just inputting something as simple as a form or 2? Like, not going deep. You don't need to get advanced. I mean, there's ways to make it more click friendly, to have better calls to action buttons. There's a lot of things you can do. There's a lot of things you can test. But if you don't even have them, you could have collected 1,000 emails. So if these big platforms, like these big social media platforms, which we all love, that, you know, it's very sexy to go out there and market all over Instagram, but at the end of the day, it's ugly and it's boring and it's not fun to grind it out and building an email audience. But the fact remains, if they go away, you don't have a business. But if you have emails, that's a platform you can own. You can pick up the phone and say, hey, send an email. Hey, do you want to talk really quick? This idea of the old school Rolodex, you can create this directory, this list of people you can count on to call your customers. And when you upgrade your ability to speak to these people, like we talked about, like with, say, a convert kit, and you've got 1,000 to 2,000 emails, you know, you're not actually getting advanced. And we go into that in some other content and how to do some of these advanced topics that are growth hacks for your email collection. If you have a big list of emails, that's first of all, they're qualified leads. Second of all, they're engaged. Third, they're at least brand, you know, they're open, they're brand positive on you, in the worst case. And in the best case, they're chomping at the bit to buy something from you. So sending a couple emails about new product launches, or, you know, a 2-email sequence that's 100 words each, talking about a product and saying, look, we're about to launch this, we're about to release this, or this is on sale, you know, it's a flash sale. Do you want to buy this? You're going to get a big pool of people who are already engaged, ready, and open and interested to buy your products. So that's why it's so important to build your emails, because this works all on the back end. And link building. Link building is one of those things that, unless you talk about it or unless you're super deep, you know, you don't really have an understanding of why it's so important. And link building is a way for your brand to be vouched for. Think about it like that. So imagine you're at a party and someone walks up and says, hey, this is my friend. You know, whoever's talking is someone who's perceived to be a cool person or someone you can trust. And they're saying, hey, look, this is my friend. They're a good time. You know, they're funny. You want to meet them, and you know, you bring them on over. So that it's like a good way to tell Google, if you have backlinks, hey Google, this website is credible, it's legit, and this is something that you should be ranking higher. So what this actually looks like from a tangible standpoint, and what it looks like, you know, on screen, is if you ever hyperlink out to another site, that is a backlink. The better the website that links to you, the more credibility and the stronger that backlink. But for now, just start with building as many backlinks as possible. And the first way to go about this, you can do this in one of two ways immediately, free, and just takes your time. The first way to go about this is to go into Google, use quotations and type in your name or your brand name and in quotations, and then search. And you can manually do that for the first 10 results. Go in and make sure that they're linking to the correct site. If I Google that and find Nick Williams is linking back to my old site, or, you know, it talks about an old job I have, or it doesn't even talk about that I founded this company, well, I'm going to make sure to go, because those are assets I own. So let's say it's LinkedIn. I'm going to go update LinkedIn to make sure it reflects. Now, of course it does, but make sure it reflects DeepBridge Consulting. Or maybe there was an article written 2 years ago that just references my Facebook page or something like that. You want to go in and make sure you're editing those things, or contacting the people who wrote those articles, editorials, whatever the case may be, and say, look, can you update this to go to this backlink? And the more you can amass, the more credible and the more vouched for Google sees you, and they'll say, look, okay, this website is good. And if they're comparing two websites, this is just one of those other factors that they rank on. If they're comparing two websites, you know, one has reviews. In a lot of ways, you look very similar. You both have reviews, you both have sales, you both have some decent traffic and keywords and content, but one of you has 50 backlinks and the other has 3. All things, you know, equal and the same. They're going to rank that other site higher. There's no doubt about it. So this is one of those things you have to go be building your backlinks. And again, it's a grind, but it is really only 1 to 2 days of work to get you going. Now, you shouldn't really ever stop doing this. You should always build the quality of your backlinks. But this is another key principle you have to hammer on. Another cool way we do this is, for instance, if I write a piece of content, like we talked about, content ladders up into both of these things. The more content you write, the more opportunities you have to build your email list, the more content you write, the more you can actually link out. If you have WordPress, Yoast is a good way to check your links, and Yoast will tell you, hey, it's probably best practice to link out 3 to 4 times. So what we do is we'll create, like for instance, if we write this blog, we'll find a couple pieces of statistics that I've quoted in this conversation we're having, and we'll actually send a link to where we got that source and say, hey, by the way, I noticed you were talking about this. It was really insightful, really helpful, and I'd be happy and honored if for some reason you felt this was also helpful to your audience. Would you mind sharing it? And if not, no worries. And you don't even have to go that far. I've had a lot of success just reaching out to people and saying, hey, I just wanted to let you know you inspired me a lot, and your piece of content was a shaping force in terms of how I talked about this to my audience. So it is a really good way to learn, and don't use it, I wouldn't use it insidiously, but I would use it strategically. And I would reach out to these people and I'd say, hey, look, I saw you wrote about this. Here's my stuff. Let me know what you think about it. And that conversation may lead to a backlink. They may say, hey, I love that. And they may go actually back into their post and say, to their audience, hey, for a fresh take on this, or for a new interesting piece of insight, go check out Nick's blog at deepbridgeconsulting.com. So you could get some luck there, but either way, it's a good way to build your network and to drive some valuable relationships with other content creators and people in your industry who may be leading more conversations that you want to jump into. To wrap all of that up, I think it's helpful to end on, look, these 3 things are so important. But the key thing to remember is the earlier you start, the better. And if you've got a business for 10 years, 20 years, and you still look at these and go, I only have 20 backlinks, there's never a number that's perfect. But you do want to be 50 plus. You have to be getting links. You have to be building your emails. What's your, set realistic goals. But you should have a road to 100, road to 1,000, road to 10,000, and keep pushing that marker. In content, absolutely there is no minimum. You just need to be producing. You need to be pressing publish. You have a brand, you have a concept, you have a business that deserves the attention, and that deserves eyeballs, and that deserves to be put in front of people. You're not doing yourself you're doing yourself a disservice by not creating content. It doesn't matter if it's a 10-minute long video, and it doesn't matter if it's a 100-word blog. It doesn't matter. Just get in the habit. You have to just start somewhere, because if you don't, it's never going to get done. So those 3 key principles, I challenge you to go out there and make some progress. Push the rock. Make a little bit of progress, and then see how you can optimize and get a little bit better, create structures around this to improve and enhance your ability to be playing in these 3 areas. So link building, email list building, and your content creation. And with that, we're going to end Whiteboard Wednesday. Thanks for checking it out. We'll see you next Wednesday with some more whiteboard activity. But if you're interested in some other stuff we're doing, we also have been doing Funnel Friday, which is a really interesting and more of a provocative look on some well-known and established brands, how they're actually creating some marketing funnels that are working, and how some of them just failed. So we talked about MoviePass a couple weeks ago. We talked about Amazon last week. I actually think this week we're going to probably talk about some big banks, because I think that's something that everyone does and doesn't realize, hey, that's actually a very sophisticated funnel that they deploy, and how can you actually learn from that? And then actually Mailbag Monday. Mailbag Mondays are by far, right now at least, our most popular. You can send in your questions as long as you're a member. If you're not even a member, you can still check it out, and then we just on the spot, we go through and hammer out some actionable insights for someone right there for free. So those are our content days. Otherwise, we're still producing a lot of other content that's not actually on the public site, but go ahead and subscribe. And if not, thanks for checking this out at least, and we'll see you around, and we'll talk soon.